History does not always remember those who built it. Sometimes it tries to forget them. In the early 19th century, Brazil was a land in transition, a colony on the verge of becoming a nation, a society marked by inequality, slavery, and rigid social rules. This was the Brazil of the empire in formation, a country where power belonged to a few, and silence was imposed on many. It is within this unequal and unstable world that the story of Maria Quitéria begins, a woman who would challenge not only an empire, but the very limits placed on her existence. Maria Quitéria was born in the countryside of Bahia, in a rural Brazil far removed from political centers and imperial palaces. She grew up surrounded by hard labor, discipline, and survival. From a young age, she learned to handle tools, animals, and responsibilities often denied to women. Life did not offer her choices, only demands. In Imperial Brazil, women were expected to obey, marry, and remain invisible in public life. For Black women, these limits were even harsher. Maria Quitéria was raised in a society that never imagined her as a historical subject, yet history would soon be forced to make room for her. In 1822, the winds of change swept across Brazil. The call for independence echoed through provinces and villages. Portugal and Brazil stood on opposite sides of a growing conflict, and Bahia became one of the central battlegrounds of this struggle. Men were summoned to fight for a new nation. Women were told to wait. But Maria Quitéria refused to remain on the sidelines of history. She understood that independence would not be granted. It would have to be fought for, and she wanted to be part of that fight. Defying her father's authority and every social rule of her time, Maria Quitéria made a decision that would change her life forever. She cut her hair. She dressed in men's clothing. She adopted a male identity. Disguised as a man, she enlisted in the Brazilian forces fighting in the War of Independence. At a time when women were forbidden from bearing arms, she entered the army through courage and deception. This was not an act of rebellion alone. It was an act of survival and conviction. Maria Quitéria was no longer waiting for history to happen. She was stepping into it. On the battlefield, Maria Quitéria proved herself not through words, but through action. She showed discipline, bravery, and resilience under fire. Her fellow soldiers began to respect her for her skills, long before they knew who she truly was. War erased illusions. Only courage remained. In the chaos of the Brazilian War of Independence, Maria Quitéria was not a symbol yet. She was a soldier. And in that role, she earned her place among those who shaped the birth of a nation. Life in the army was harsh, unforgiving, and dangerous. Discipline ruled every moment, and mistakes were often paid for with blood. Maria Quitéria adapted quickly. She learned military drills, weapon handling, and battlefield tactics with remarkable speed. Her physical endurance and determination set her apart. In a world built to exclude her, she survived by being stronger, more focused, and more resilient than expected. War does not care about origins. It tests everyone equally. As the fighting intensified in Bahia, the reality of war became impossible to ignore. Villages were destroyed, lives were lost. The dream of independence demanded sacrifice. Maria Quitéria fought in several confrontations against Portuguese forces. She marched long distances, endured hunger and exhaustion, and faced the constant fear of death, yet she did not retreat. Each battle reinforced her commitment, not just to independence, but to proving that she belonged where history said she did not. Eventually, her true identity was discovered. The revelation shocked her commanders. A woman, a Black woman, serving as a soldier. By all existing rules, Maria Quitéria should have been expelled from the army immediately. Her presence challenged military hierarchy and social norms at the same time. But war has its own logic. Her bravery, discipline, and battlefield record spoke louder than prejudice. Instead of punishment, she was allowed to remain. In that moment, competence overruled convention. Maria Quitéria continued to fight openly, now recognized for who she truly was. She no longer hid her identity. She carried it with pride. Her courage began to spread among the troops. Stories of her actions circulated through the camps. She was no longer just a soldier. She was becoming a symbol, a living contradiction to the rigid structure of Imperial Brazil, where women and Black people were denied agency and authority. The War of Independence in Bahia moved toward its decisive phase. Portuguese forces weakened. Brazilian resistance grew stronger. Maria Quitéria stood at the center of this transformation, not as a commander, not as a politician, but as proof that history is shaped by those who dare to act. As victory approached, the foundations of the Brazilian Empire were being laid, and within those foundations stood the quiet, powerful legacy of a woman who refused to remain invisible. The final battles in Bahia marked a turning point in the War of Independence. Brazilian forces advanced with determination, pushing Portuguese troops toward retreat. Maria Quitéria was present during these decisive moments. She fought not for glory, but for the survival of a cause she believed in. Amid gunfire, smoke, and exhaustion, the idea of a new nation began to take shape. Independence was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming reality through sacrifice. And Maria Quitéria had earned her place in that victory. With the Portuguese defeat in Bahia in 1823, the war finally came to an end. Brazil's independence was secured. For many soldiers, this meant returning home, carrying memories that would never fade. For Maria Quitéria, it meant facing a new reality. The battlefield had offered her purpose and recognition. Peace, however, offered uncertainty. What place would exist for a woman like her in the Brazil that was being born? Maria Quiteria's courage did not go unnoticed by military leaders. Her actions reached the highest levels of the new empire. She was officially recognized for her service and bravery. In an extraordinary gesture, she was awarded a military decoration by Emperor Dom Pedro III himself. This recognition was historic. A black woman, a former disguised soldier, being honored by the Emperor of Brazil. It was a rare moment when the empire acknowledged someone it was not designed to include. Yet recognition did not mean equality. Titles and medals could not erase the social barriers of Imperial Brazil. Maria Quitéria returned to a society that still limited women's roles and denied opportunities to the poor and to black citizens. Her heroism did not transform her into a powerful figure within the system. She did not gain wealth or political influence. The contradiction was clear. The empire celebrated her bravery, but could not fully accept her existence as a symbol of change. Maria Quitéria lived the rest of her life away from the spotlight of history. Her story slowly faded from public memory. The nation moved forward, building its institutions, monuments, and official heroes. Many of those who fought on the front lines were forgotten, but forgotten does not mean erased. The legacy of Maria Quitéria remained, waiting to be rediscovered, a reminder that the foundations of Brazil were built not only by emperors and elites, but by ordinary people who dared to defy the limits imposed on them. As the Brazilian Empire consolidated itself, official history began to take shape. Textbooks, speeches, and monuments selected which stories would represent the nation. Maria Quitéria was rarely among them. Her life did not fit comfortably into the narrative of order and hierarchy the empire sought to promote. A woman who broke rules, challenged authority, and crossed forbidden boundaries was difficult to celebrate openly. Silence became the easiest solution. For decades, Maria Quitéria existed only in fragments, brief mentions, footnotes, and scattered references. Yet her story survived in another way, through oral tradition, local memory, and regional pride in Bahia. These unofficial forms of remembrance kept her legacy alive when official history turned away. They preserved the idea that the nation's birth depended on people far removed from imperial power. History, even when ignored, has a way of resisting disappearance. In the 20th century, historians began to look more closely at voices long excluded from the national narrative. Women, Black Brazilians, and common soldiers slowly reclaimed space in historical research. Maria Quitéria emerged again, not as a curiosity, but as a key figure in the War of Independence. Her life began to be re-examined through new lenses: gender, race, and social class. What once seemed an exception now revealed a deeper truth about who truly fought for Brazil's independence. Maria Quiteria's story resonates because it exposes the gap between ideals and reality. Brazil was born speaking of freedom, while maintaining exclusion. She embodies that contradiction. Her courage forced the empire to acknowledge her, briefly, but not to transform itself. And yet, recognition, even incomplete, planted a seed. A reminder that systems can be challenged from within. Today, Maria Quitéria stands as a symbol of resistance and belonging, not because she was perfect, but because she acted when silence was expected. Her legacy reaches beyond the battlefield. It speaks to anyone who was told they did not belong. Maria Quitéria reminds us that history is not only written by those in power, it is shaped by those who dare to step forward, even when the cost is high. When we look back at 19th century Brazil, it is tempting to see the past as distant and resolved. But Maria Quiteria's story reminds us that many of the struggles of that era continue to echo today. The Brazilian Empire was founded on promises of freedom, yet it preserved deep systems of exclusion. Slavery endured, women remained outside political life, the poor stayed invisible. Maria Quitéria lived inside this contradiction. She helped build a nation that was not yet ready to fully recognize her. Over time, the memory of Maria Quitéria became contested. Who had the right to tell her story? And how should she be remembered? For many years, her life was softened, almost romanticized, as if her courage were merely an unusual anecdote. But Maria Quitéria was not simply brave. She was disobedient. She disobeyed her father, social norms, military rules, and the expectations imposed on Black women of her time. And that disobedience was deliberate. There is something deeply human in Maria Quiteria's journey. She was not born a heroine. She was not prepared for glory. She felt fear. She risked everything. She paid a high price. Her life after the war was not marked by comfort or security. This reality challenges the idea that history automatically rewards those who help shape it. Yet Maria Quitéria left behind something greater than recognition or wealth. She left an example. Today, telling Maria Quiteria's story is not only about remembering the past, it is about understanding the present. How many women still feel the need to disguise themselves, not in clothing, but in behavior, to be accepted? How many people must prove their worth twice just to occupy spaces of power? Maria Quitéria forces us to confront the truth that the struggle for recognition did not end with independence. It merely changed form. In the end, Maria Quitéria is more than a historical figure. She is an open question. What kind of Brazil was built? Who was included in that construction? And whose stories remain untold? In Imperial Brazil, a Black woman dared to do the unthinkable. She did not ask permission to fight. She did not ask authorization to exist as a historical subject. Maria Quitéria entered history not because the system allowed it, but because she chose to cross it. When Brazil began to shape its official heroes, it chose faces and stories that fit neatly into the image of the nation it wanted to project. Men in uniform, politicians, and emperors occupied the center of historical memory. Maria Quitéria remained on the margins, not because her contribution was small, but because her existence challenged too many rules at once. A woman, Black, poor, a soldier. She did not fit the mold of imperial heroism, yet time has its own force. Stories that are pushed aside often return with greater strength. Scholars, educators, and communities began to reclaim Maria Quiteria's legacy, not as an exception, but as a fundamental part of Brazil's independence. She came to represent the presence of ordinary people in extraordinary moments, those who fought without speeches, without treaties, and without monuments in their lifetime. Maria Quiteria's legacy extends beyond the battlefield. She became a reference for women who would later challenge rigid systems and forbidden spaces. She proved that courage has no gender, that patriotism does not belong to a single social class, and that heroism does not depend on immediate recognition. By taking up arms, she did more than fight a war. She claimed the right to exist as the author of her own story. Perhaps Maria Quiteria's greatest victory was not military, but the silent impact her story continues to have centuries later. Each time her name is spoken, something shifts. Each time her image is restored, an absence is corrected. She reminds us that Brazil was not built only by those seated in palaces, but by people who acted when history told them to remain silent. Maria Quitéria lived in Imperial Brazil, but her story transcends time. She was not perfect. She was not rewarded. She was not fully recognized in her lifetime. Still, she chose to fight. And by doing so, she left a permanent mark on the nation's history. Maria Quitéria is not only a heroine of the past, she is a mirror that forces us to ask, who do we choose to remember? And who are we still leaving behind? Maria Quitéria did not wait for permission to become part of history. She stepped into it. In an empire that tried to silence women, Black people, and the poor, she chose courage over obedience and action over invisibility. Her story reminds us that nations are not built only by emperors and elites, but by ordinary people who dare to defy the limits imposed on them. If this story moved you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more voices like Maria Quiteria's are heard and remembered. Because remembering the past is one of the most powerful ways to change the future. Thank you for watching.